Lily, where is she? Lily!
Ethan's voice tore across the concrete like a gunshot.
She's under. Oh God, somebody help me!
The music died. The crowd went silent, then exploded into chaos. Screams rose from the stands. Children cried. Phones lifted. A mother fainted. On the far side of the holding tank, a trainer yelled, "Gate breach! Emergency code! Shut it down! The gate's jammed! It's not responding!" And then they all heard it. Clear, soft, and drowning. "Daddy, please! It hurts! Help me!" Lily's voice, gasping, broken, floated from beneath the waterline. Blood spread around her like ink in a glass. She reached upward with her good arm, eyes wide with panic. Then she vanished beneath a wall of black and white muscle. Amaya had her. And this time, she wasn't letting go. Ethan Rowe wasn't just any trainer. He was the trainer. The face on every brochure, the name every eye, every guest remembered. With nearly 2 decades of experience working with orcas, he had become a living symbol of ocean world's promise, harmony between man and beast. Calm, soft-spoken, and deeply intuitive, Ethan was known for his almost uncanny ability to read the whale's behavior. His colleagues called him the whale listener, but beyond the stage, Ethan was a single father. His daughter Lily had grown up inside the glass walls of Ocean World. While other children played with dolls, she colored drawings of dolphins. While others watched cartoons, she watched orca feedings from the trainer's deck. She was quiet, curious, and adored the animals, especially the calves. Ethan always believed he was giving Lily a magical childhood. She wasn't just watching the whales. She was learning to love them, like he did. Staff joked that she was their youngest future trainer. But in that comfort, blind spots grew. The backstage access, the casual routines, the belief that the animals knew them. Ethan saw Ocean World as a second home. But in trusting it with his daughter, he had unknowingly placed her at the center of a ticking clock. Among the orcas at Ocean World, Amaya stood apart. Captured off the North Atlantic coast as a calf, she had spent her entire existence in captivity, performing, obeying, adapting. Trainers called her the thinker. While others responded with energy and eagerness, Amaya often hesitated, not out of confusion, but deliberation. She watched. She learned. In 2023, something changed. Amaya gave birth. For the first time in her confined life, she became a mother. And with that, her behavior transformed. She grew territorial, protective. She circled the tank with a quiet intensity whenever her calf drifted too far. Anytime staff moved the calf to a separate holding area, Amaya resisted, thrashing at gates, refusing food, ignoring cues. Internally, some flagged her behavior as a red zone. Notes were made. Increased agitation post-birth. Delayed compliance. But in an industry where predictability sells tickets, there was little appetite for disruption. The calf was shuffled in and out of view depending on the schedule. And Amaya, now hyper-aware, responded with escalating stress. To outsiders, she was still part of the show. But to those who watched closely, a deeper truth was emerging. Amaya wasn't just performing anymore. She was guarding something. And no one seemed ready to acknowledge what that might mean. Lily Rowe had spent more time behind the scenes at Ocean World than most interns. To her, the backstage pools weren't restricted areas. They were playgrounds. Trainers trusted her. She followed rules. She never ran, never shouted, never disrespected the animals. And above all, she was Ethan's daughter. In recent months, Lily had grown especially fond of the youngest orca calf. She named it Pebble, after the gray spot on its dorsal fin. While Ethan reviewed show schedules or prepped routines, Lily would quietly sit near the glass, sketching Pebble with markers on her drawing pad. Sometimes, with supervision, she was allowed to toss soft toys into the water. Nothing intrusive, just harmless gestures of affection. To most staff, it was sweet, familiar, part of the park's family-like culture. But routine breeds complacency, and no one questioned the access anymore. No one reevaluated the risks, especially not now, when a postpartum orca mother was showing signs of distress. The assumptions were simple. Lily was careful. The whales knew her, and nothing had ever gone wrong before. That comforting logic would hold until the day it didn't, until trust collided with instinct and shattered. It was just past 1:30 p.m., and Ocean World was humming with the rhythm of routine spectacle. The midday orca performance, Voices of the Deep, was the park's signature act, and today's crowd filled every tier of the grandstand. Families clutched popcorn buckets and foam whale hats. Children pressed against the railing, hoping to be splashed. Teenagers queued for selfies with the glass backdrop behind them. Backstage, handlers moved with mechanical precision, testing mic packs, adjusting platform gates, cueing music levels. Ethan Rowe reviewed the choreography sheet one last time, nodding to his team. He was calm, focused. Out front, the LED display counted down. 5 minutes to showtime. No one noticed the subtle tension building below the surface. No one saw the way Amaya circled tighter, faster, her calf drifting just out of reach. Above the water, anticipation pulsed. Beneath it, something ancient stirred. The show was about to begin, but not the one they'd rehearsed. At 2:15 p.m. sharp, the opening chords of Voices of the Deep echoed across the stadium. The crowd erupted as Ethan Rowe stepped onto the slick platform, smiling and waving beneath a clear California sky. Behind him, 2 orcas breached on cue, sending waves into the splash zone. Laughter, applause, the illusion of harmony. Backstage, Lily stood near the rear holding tank, just beyond the trainer line, close enough to observe, not close enough to be in danger. Or so it was believed. She held her sketchbook in one hand, the other gripping a plush toy whale she'd named Noodle. Beside her, a junior trainer monitored the gate. The orca calf, Pebble, floated calmly just beneath the surface, but Amaya, the calf's mother, wasn't in the show tank. She was in the adjacent medical pool, separated by a heavy-duty gate. From where she floated, she could see her calf. She could also see Lily. The crowd remained unaware as a low vibration rolled through the back tanks, barely audible, but unmistakable to anyone who'd worked with orcas long enough. A deep, pulsing call. Trainers often referred to it as a distress vocalization, but there was something sharper now. Urgent. A mother's warning. Ethan was mid-performance, gesturing toward the audience when it happened. A mechanical click. The gate lock between Amaya and the rear pool was released. Unauthorized. Unplanned. To this day, no one can say whether it was a malfunction or human error. But within seconds, Amaya surged forward with terrifying force, breaching the divide. From the stands, it looked like nothing. A shadow, a splash, routine movement backstage. But to Lily, it was a blur of black and white muscle erupting from the water. Amaya didn't hesitate. She launched upward, mouth open, and in one terrible instant, clamped down. Lily didn't scream at first. Her body disappeared into the pool, yanked by her shoulder. The junior trainer shouted for help, scrambling for the emergency pole. An alarm was triggered. Backstage turned to chaos. On the main stage, Ethan froze. He couldn't see her. Not at first. but he heard it. The crowd going silent, the screaming from the side tank, then the unmistakable voice of someone yelling his name. "It's Lily!" He ran, dropped the mic, vaulted over the low barrier, and sprinted toward the holding tanks. By the time he reached the edge, Lily's blood had already begun to bloom beneath the surface, and Amaya was circling. Slowly, protectively, possessively. The emergency alarm blared across Ocean World, but by then, precious seconds had already slipped away. Ethan Rowe didn't hesitate. He dove headfirst into the holding tank, slicing into the blood-streaked water with nothing but instinct. The surface rippled once, then closed behind him. From the edge of the deck, trainers scrambled. The 10-foot emergency poles, designed to distract or redirect an orca, were too far from the scene. The nearest bait buckets were empty. The underwater gate controls, meant to isolate aggressive animals into smaller enclosures, were jammed. Inside the tank, visibility was poor. Red haze floated in clouds. Ethan caught a glimpse of movement. Lily's yellow shoe still on her foot, drifting upward before being pulled down again. He swam harder. Above, the junior trainer finally retrieved a metal pole and tried to break Amaya's focus, banging against the water, shouting her name. But Amaya didn't react. She wasn't enraged. She wasn't lashing out. She was holding, wrapped around the small, limp body, like a grieving mother shielding her young. Security arrived within minutes, but they were trained for crowd control, not marine emergencies. A supervisor screamed for the gate to be overridden. Another tried to contact the on-site veterinarian. He was on lunch, and amid it all, one voice rose above the chaos. "Ethan's. Let her go! That's my daughter! Let her go!" Amaya surfaced for a moment, Lily still cradled in her mouth, then sank again, deeper into the holding tank. The control systems failed. The backup protocols weren't fast enough, and the only person close enough to intervene was a father, trapped between the crushing weight of water and a terrible realization. Ocean World was not prepared for this. It had never been. And now, they were watching it unfold. Not as trainers, not as performers, but as witnesses to a failure that had just turned fatal. By the time the dive team reached the scene, nearly 11 minutes had passed since the first impact. When Amaya finally released Lily's body, it floated upward with an eerie stillness. Ethan clutched her before anyone else could, pulling her to the surface, eyes wide, face drained of all color. Lily was still breathing, but barely. Her right shoulder was torn open, the arm hanging at an unnatural angle. Blood streamed from a deep puncture wound just below the collarbone. Her lips were blue. A medic on scene later described her pulse as a flicker, nothing more. They rushed her from the pool deck on a stretcher. The crowd, now evacuated, stood silently outside the gates, watching emergency crews carry out a bloodied child, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Inside the operations office, no one spoke, because they knew. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a freak moment. It was a convergence of failures, technical, procedural, and moral. Ethan stayed behind, soaked, silent. His wetsuit was torn, his hands trembling as he stared at the pool that had once been his sanctuary, and now reeked of chlorine, blood, and guilt. Later that night, doctors confirmed what everyone feared. Lily would survive, but with permanent nerve damage in her right arm. Months of rehabilitation, years of trauma, and no chance of returning to the life she once knew. Ocean World released a single statement. "We are deeply saddened by an incident involving a minor guest. An internal review is underway." No mention of Amaya, no mention of the gate failure, no mention of Ethan Rowe. But the surface no longer concealed what lay beneath. And for those who had spent years ignoring the signs, there was no excuse left, only consequence. In the days that followed, as reporters circled and silence thickened, internal documents began to surface. Emails, memos, staff reports, and they told a story far more damning than the official statement ever would. 3 weeks before the attack, a junior trainer had filed a behavioral log noting Amaya's increasing aggression when separated from her calf. The entry read, "Persistent tail slaps, refuses recall cues, pupillary dilation during proximity to humans, possible maternal distress." It was forwarded, then ignored. A month prior, Ethan Rowe himself had submitted a formal request to suspend calf interactions backstage. "I don't feel confident placing children near Amaya or her calf at this time," he wrote. The response from management? "Noted, but VIPs expect calf exposure. Let's not disrupt the season." Several former employees had tried to raise red flags over the years, citing under-maintained gates, inconsistent safety drills, and pressure to prioritize guest experience over animal readiness. Most of them had quietly disappeared. Some signed NDAs, others simply gave up. Ethan had stayed, believed he could work from within. But no amount of experience could override a culture that had made one choice again and again: ignore the instinct, push the performance, silence the warning. The footage leaked 3 days later. A grainy, off-angle clip taken from a guest's phone showed Lily moments before the attack, smiling, tossing a plush toy into the tank. Seconds later, the camera jerked violently as screams echoed in the background. The clip ended with a trainer yelling, "Shut it down! Now!" It spread like wildfire. By the end of the week, #justice for Lily was trending in 12 countries. News anchors debated ethics. Animal welfare groups launched campaigns. Former trainers broke their silence in anonymous interviews. One, whose identity was masked, said flatly, "This was going to happen. It just wasn't supposed to be here or is." Outside Ocean World's gates, the first vigil appeared. A line of stuffed animals, flowers, and hand-drawn whales. Some signs read, "She's not bait, she's a child." Others showed Lily's smiling face beneath the words, "Born into wonder, bled into silence." Amaya's name reappeared in public discourse. Activists demanded her release to a sanctuary. Ocean World pushed back with sanitized press briefings, citing isolated behavior and internal procedural reviews. But the damage was done. This wasn't just about a wounded child. It was about a pattern, one built on rehearsed empathy and concealed risk. A system where animals were pushed to perform beyond their limits, and where even a trainer's own daughter could be placed in danger to preserve an illusion. What had once been a spectacle of wonder was now being re-examined under harsh, unblinking light. And for the first time in years, the glass didn't just reflect applause. It reflected accountability. Ocean World resumed shows within 2 weeks. The lights came back on. The music returned. Tourists queued beneath banners of smiling trainers and leaping orcas, many unaware, or simply choosing not to know, what had unfolded just beyond the main tank. Lily's name was never mentioned on stage. Ethan Rowe's was quietly removed from all promotional material. But outside the park, something had shifted. Petitions calling for an end to captive breeding programs gathered millions of signatures. Several major sponsors pulled their funding. Congressional aides requested internal audits. And across the country, marine parks faced renewed scrutiny, not just for their treatment of animals, but for the way they managed people, especially the ones who dared to speak up. Lily Rowe would never return to the glass walls that shaped her childhood. Her drawings of Pebble now hung in a hospital room, taped beside get-well cards from strangers. Her right hand, once so steady with a marker, was learning to move again, inch by inch. And Ethan? He spoke once, in a private interview months later. He didn't cry. He didn't blame Amaya. All he said was this: she did what any mother would. The difference is, she was in a cage. The tragedy of Ocean World was never just one moment. It was the culmination of choices to prioritize profit over safety, illusion over instinct, and silence over truth. And the question it leaves behind is one that still echoes through every pool, every platform, every choreographed dive. How many warnings do we need before we finally listen? Lily's story is not just a tragedy, it's a reckoning. Behind every animal attack in captivity lies a history of ignored warnings, suppressed reports, and institutions built on denial. What happened at Ocean World was preventable, and yet it happened. If this story moved you, don't let it fade. Speak up. Demand changes. Share the truth behind the glass. Subscribe to our channel for more true, untold stories of animal encounters that expose the cost of silence